Hi, I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental topics that green up our world. As toddlers, we're told to share because it's nice to share. But there's a growing movement of people who say that sharing has many other benefits as well, including environmental, which is today's topic. Our guest today is Ryan Gourley, founder of A Squared Share. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So what is A Squared Share?
So A Squared Share is a community organization that we recently developed, and right now it's a website, hosts a directory where people can log on and find out different businesses, learn about different businesses in the Ann Arbor area that are involved in the sharing economy.
Great. What's the website?
The website is a2share.org.
Okay, great. And you had a sharing summit last summer, and I went to it, and it was fantastic.
Thank you.
We had so many different great interactions with people on panels, and they had tables set up, and you had so many different people. It's really exciting, all the different initiatives that are going on in the area. And today is going to be kind of a whirlwind tour. We're going to talk about a bunch of different ones, and for the audience, they don't need to worry if they didn't get the full name or the full URL, because they can go to your website, and it's all on there in a directory that you have.
Yep, absolutely. And we also have a map up there too, so they can even see it on a map where that business is located.
Perfect. Great. Okay, so to get started, let's talk about, well, first of all, I'll list off, you've got things about food and tools and skills and housing and transportation. We're going to try to hit on each of those briefly. So let's start with food.
Yeah. So food, there's a couple. There's the co-op, of course, People's Food Co-op. And then there's also one that many Ann Arborites are familiar with is Selma Cafe. So there's those opportunities.
How about Real Good Food?
Yeah, so Real Good Food is an interesting organization, a new startup that was recently founded by a Master's Science student at the School of Natural Resource and Environment, where I study, and he's also a dual degree. He's an MBA student. And as part of that, he decided to start this website called realgoodfood.org. And basically, it's a food swapping website, so people can log on and let's say I've baked bread, but I've baked 3 extra loaves than I actually need, and I'm looking for some lasagna. So I can log onto the website and say, I have 3 loaves of bread, I would like to trade someone for their lasagna. And then someone who happens to have lasagna can match up with that and say, you know what, I'll take your loaves of bread, and here you go. So it's just an opportunity for people to connect real easily, so that food doesn't go to waste, and people can try new recipes and different dishes that they might not necessarily make themselves or be exposed to otherwise.
And it sounds like it's really good quality food, too. People that kind of like foodies that really like good food and want to taste each other's good food.
Right. It's definitely seems like it has some Epicurean slants. So.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And then there's a quite different one, Food Recovery Network. What's that?
Yeah, so the Food Recovery Network is a national organization, and basically they recover food that is going to be thrown out. So it's pre-consumer food. Let's say a dining hall, like at University of Michigan, is prepared enough food for 200 students one night, but only 150 come through. And so they have all that extra food. Food Recovery Network goes around to different restaurants and dining halls and saves that food from going to waste, going to a landfill, and donates it to a local charitable organization. We have a University of Michigan chapter that does that here, and they donate it to food gatherers.
Great. Well, that's really commendable.
Yeah.
On a solid waste issue, but for solid waste reasons, but also because of the inputs that go into the food.
Right, absolutely. It really, I guess it just tightens things up, so there's a lot less waste, both at the end and going into it. Yeah.
Sharing tools is something that's really interesting. At your summit, I met the founders of 1,000 Tools.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Alan Mond and Julian, blanking on his last name, but they founded 1000tools.org, which is another website you can log on, and so you can log on both as a owner and a renter. And so let's say I have a drill, I can post that drill, and then someone, rather than going out and buying their own drill, can log onto the website and just rent one for the hour they need it for, you know, $1 or $2 or whatever it's listed as, rather than buying a new one for 20, 30 plus. So it's really an opportunity. I mean, there's this saying that no one really wants a drill, they want a hole in the wall. And so it's all about having access to these tools rather than ownership. I've also heard something along the lines that the average drill is used for 8 minutes over its total lifetime. And so it doesn't make much sense for 20 people to own a drill. What really they need is one drill in that community, and then they can all share that. And so 1,000 Tools facilitates that exchange.
Which is interesting, because a while back I found that a hand drill is really quite easy to use. I mean, I didn't realize it, but it's actually quite easy. So now I go to my hand drill most of the time. I rarely go to my power drill, and it would have been made more sense to just share it, or I guess I still could. I could list it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're a new company, so they're looking for more people to post their tools. So I'd highly recommend
Yeah,
it.
I should. In fact, when I went to that company's website, it was really interesting because, for instance, somebody's wanting to share her canning supplies, and she also put on there, I would love to share my knowledge about canning too.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a neat way to combine skill sharing and tool sharing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, once you lay the groundwork for these sharing of objects, people also want to share their knowledge and how to use them. And so it really just lets open the floodgates of that community building.
And, you know, speaking of the power tool, I was thinking also, for instance, like I have a leaf blower. And past few years I've been trying to use it less. I've been trying to use a rake because it's good for my, you know, body as well, and way less harmful to the environment, because I found out that leaf blowers, you know, have a lot of exhaust and stuff. And it occurred to me that if I didn't have the leaf blower in the house even, I wouldn't use it much. But once in a while, I love to have a leaf blower to blow out my garage or something, and that would be another great instance of, you know, I don't need it all year round.
Right. It's one of those things you're only using once in a blue moon, so why have it take up space in your garage, and why have, you know, 100 out there in your neighborhood when really you each only need once every few months.
And some people have to get a bigger garage or a bigger house because they have one of each.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a problem right there. Back in the old days, people used to borrow from their neighbors quite a bit. You knew your neighbors better. Well, nowadays it's kind of difficult. So there's nextdoor.com. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so nextdoor.com is a new social media platform, and basically rather than, so to take, for example, Facebook, which most people are familiar with, Facebook started at colleges, and so you had to be affiliated with a college to log on, and now it's open to everyone. Well, nextdoor.com, you have to be affiliated with a certain neighborhood, and so it's open to any neighborhood, but you belong to your own certain neighborhood. And basically, it facilitates the same sort of exchanges we've been talking about. So people could post what food they have to share, or what they need as far as babysitters and cat sitters and dog sitters, or general advice about the neighborhood. Where's a good place to go for Mexican food? Where's a good place to get your car fixed? Things like that. So it's really about facilitating interaction between neighbors, and so with the idea that what happens online, they then take it offline.
Well, our neighborhood is part of one, and in fact, we created a neighborhood. It wasn't even a neighborhood that was long-standing. We just decided to do it, and I've noticed a lot of the same kind of things that we're going to be talking about today being shared. For instance, rides or roommates, as you mentioned, tools, and, you know, somebody had broken concrete. I mean, all kinds of things get shared. It's really great.
Yeah.
There's something called MakerWorks, and what's the other one that's similar?
All Hands Active?
Yeah, in terms of tool sharing and skill sharing.
Yeah, so they're what we call makerspace, and basically they've leased these buildings where people can come together and use tools that they're not going to have normally, like a laser cutter, for example. And there will also be other makers there who can teach them how to use these tools. So it's really a neat opportunity to use like cutting edge technology and build new things at the intersection of science and art and crafts and all of that.
Mm-hmm. It's getting to be some pretty exciting things like what, 3D printers?
3D printing, yeah, I believe they do have one. I'm not sure which of those two, but I believe they do have some sort of, I don't know if it's an actual like cutting edge 3D printer, but
still,
yeah,
pretty exciting stuff. And a little less high tech is sharing books. Of course, there's the public libraries, but something that came up in my neighborhood and I found out is nationwide is the little free libraries. Do you know about those?
I don't know much about those, but as far as I understand, they're little pop-up libraries that you know, you might find in the side of a road in a neighborhood, just a bookshelf even, that people can take a book and leave a book.
Well, they're really sweet. I'm going to show a photo of the one in my neighborhood.
Okay.
It's just a cute little house with a door because, you know, the books have to stay, you know, rainproof.
Right.
Just the other day I went by and borrowed a book, and tonight after work I'm going to go put one in to replace it. It's really, and the family that put it out there, they love to, you know, come out and talk to you if you're looking at the book. You know, it's just a really sweet way for people to get to know each other in the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the whole skill sharing, that's really booming lately, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So here we have Ann Arbor Reskilling Festival, and then you could also say with MakerWorks and All Hands Active, those are also skill sharing. I think it's, we've noticed kind of a resurgence in that people are interested in being more resilient. I think a lot of people are thinking about transition and what the future might look like with climate change and peak oil and what sort of skills they might want in such a future. Or even barring that, even not thinking about that future, who doesn't like to learn new things and be you know, as self-reliant and self-sufficient as possible. So skill sharing organizations such as the Reskilling Festival allow people to come together as a large group and learn just, you know, every skill under the sun, really.
And who doesn't like to do more with less, too?
Right.
Yeah, regardless of what the future may bring, it's more economic. And I have noticed that the Reskilling Festival is a little less high-tech than the MakerWorks type of thing, so it's kind of a nice complement to those organizations.
Yeah.
I think the Reskilling Festival tries to have things that are either low energy or, you know, skills that our forebears used to have that we've lost, that kind of thing.
How to mend your own clothes, how to grow your own food, things like that. Whereas I see MakerWorks and All Hands Active as more like high-tech, you know, skills for the 22nd century.
But I have noticed they have things like knitting on, they have a directory, right?
I believe it's All Hands Active that has the directory. Yeah.
And they even have knitting on there. So I guess people that like to make things like to make all kinds of things.
Right,
so.
right. That's what's so fascinating about that organization is it really is a hodgepodge of artists and scientists coming together to see what new crazy ideas they can come up with.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And Common Cycle. Now we are going to have somebody on the show talking about Common Cycle. So, but it's such an important thing, we can't miss it today, too.
Sure. So Common Cycle is, as I understand, it's an all-volunteer organization where they know a lot about bikes and they're interested in helping their community members also learn about bikes. And so you can, you know, if you have a question about your bike or your bike needs fixing, you can bring it to their stand, which I believe is at the farmers markets. I'm not exactly sure on what days, but they have a presence there and you can bring your bike and they operate on donations. So it's really just a great little community organization that helps people learn about bikes and become self-sufficient in fixing their own bikes.
Great. And I know that A Squared Share is starting a directory, right?
Yes.
That is hopefully going to help people that, not just a directory of all these different organizations, but what I'm referring to is a directory of people that can share their skills.
Yes.
So if people have anything, they don't have to be the world's expert in something, just if they enjoy it, right? They can go to your website and be listed as saying, you know, I'd be glad to teach somebody about, you know, what knitting even doesn't have to be anything complex or amazing, right?
Right, right. And so on our directory page on our website, we have a Google form, a form that you can fill in and just you know, list your name and what skills you have to share, and just any other details you'd like us to know. And then we will, that information probably won't be public, at least for now, but if anyone contacts us saying, hey, I'm looking for someone who can teach me how to can, then we have a list of people in Ann Arbor who are able to do that and willing to share that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Great, because there's so much going on. There's the free school in Ann Arbor, and there's so many people that are really enjoying learning from each other. It's a really neat movement.
It is.
So let's see, sharing housing. Let's talk about that. Recently it came to my attention that University of Michigan has a home share for seniors. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that. That also recently came to my attention, so it's new to me. But as I understand it, seniors can sign up to have a younger person share their home with them, and maybe help them with some daily living tasks that they might not be able to do on their own. Even, you know, if it's something as much as just grabbing groceries, you know, a couple times a week, or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Which is great, because I know when I was in college we were always trying to find that kind of situation, but it wasn't, you know, there was nobody helping us to connect. So
Right, right.
And then there's co-housing in town, right?
Yep. So there's the, I'm going to mess up the name, but
Sunward?
Sunward Co-housing, yes, which is a intentional community. It's on the outskirts of Ann Arbor, and basically it's a group of people who've decided that they would like to share their housing and their food system, and all of the things that go into life. They want to share it together in a community. Mm-hmm. So that's one option, and then there's of course the co-op system here.
Oh yeah.
We have lots of co-ops here.
And I bet it's easier to share tools, like you said, sharing food, but all these different things. Another one that recently came to my attention is the Ann Arbor football rentals,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. For overflow, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so basically you can, again, list your home on that website. If you're willing to rent it out to people who come in for the weekends for football games, and you'll take photos of your house and the amenities available and what weekends it's available, and then people who are traveling from the other teams or even alums who are traveling back into town, rather than, you know, face exorbitant prices at hotels or be, you know, have them booked out months in advance, they can find comfortable housing at a reasonable price, and that actually that money stays in the community and goes to support the local economy.
Mm-hmm. My impression was that sometimes the hotels get booked up
Yeah.
during graduation weekend and stuff, and so you know, it's kind of nice to think that instead of having to build a hotel that's going to be empty most of the year except for peak weekends, that
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from an environmental perspective, I mean, it makes a ton of sense, because why build more hotels when we have the space?
Mm-hmm.
and people aren't using it necessarily? Maybe a lot of people would prefer to be out of town on football
Mm-hmm.
on home game weekends.
Yeah.
And so they have this empty space just sitting there. Well, it's all about making the most efficient use of our resources.
Yeah, great. And transportation, there's a lot of different ride shares on your website. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so there's iShare Ride and Green Ride Connect, and I believe both of those are through the University of Michigan for students and
Okay.
faculty and staff. And then there's also some that are open to Southeast Michigan. And we also have listed on there Zipcar, which a lot of people are familiar. That's not technically a ride share program, but it is about reducing cars on the road and sharing resources. So, you know, 13 people might share one Zipcar rather than, you know, each of us owning our own car.
Yeah, the Zipcar thing, sometimes when I think about it, I think, well, you're still driving, but if you don't have a car,
Mm-hmm.
you may not drive as much. I mean, I joined Zipcar, and it's convenient, but it's kind of not super convenient, so I tend to ride my bike more.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about it that I've been thinking about is the fact that if we need less parking spaces, because for instance, if every student comes to Ann Arbor with a car, then we need tons of parking spaces, and parking spaces take up room and cement and, you know, places where we could have
Pave over
had
parks, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And places where we could put housing so that people could be downtown and walk to groceries and such. So if we could like have fewer cars by sharing a few. You mentioned earlier something about peer-to-peer car sharing. What's that?
Yeah, so peer-to-peer car sharing is the idea that rather than going through a company like Zipcar as the middleman, I can just rent out my car myself. There's still a company that facilitates this exchange. So some examples, and they're not yet here in Ann Arbor, but Get Around is one. I think Sprite is another. And so I would list my car on that website and say, here's the hourly rate for it, here are photos of it, here is information about how to pick up the keys and drop off and all that. And then someone who's looking for a car for a couple hours can log on and book it. And they make it real easy now with, you know, with mobile technology and websites, and it's very clean, smooth transaction.
I would love to borrow a truck. I'm supposed to be helping my son move this weekend,
Right.
and I wish I knew somebody. You know, you hate to ask a friend to borrow their truck. You'd like to be able to pay them. You know, it'd be nice to have a program that's set up like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about sharing stuff. People have way too much stuff, as we all know. FreeCycle is something I've used a lot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so FreeCycle is a well, it's a group of free cyclers, but they tend to operate through websites or email listservs, list groups. And so basically, rather than chucking something in a landfill, if you have something that's still usable and that someone might appreciate, you list it on FreeCycle, and then people can look through the listings and see things that they might want. So it's kind of like a free garage sale that's online. And yeah, you can find all sorts of treasures on there. It's really great, and I appreciate it from the environmental perspective in that it's taking all that waste out of the landfill and getting a little more life out of things that are perfectly usable.
I've used it a lot, and it's been amazing to me what people want. For instance, I had an old video camera that's ancient, you know, those big things. You know, I thought nobody's going to want that. Well, so many people wanted that camera. I mean, it got taken immediately, and it's easy because you tell the first person that answers, yes, I will put it out for you. It's not like you have a whole bunch of people coming by. I mean, there's ways of doing it that, in fact, I've never even seen any of the people that have come to take my things. I've just put it on my porch and said it'll be there, you know, Monday morning, you know.
Right, right. So it's very user-friendly
Yeah.
and not a lot of extra effort on the part of the free cycler. All they have to do is list it, and you think about it, that's just as easy as taking it out to the curb, and you're not carrying that moral weight either, that guilt of like throwing out a perfectly good thing.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, I'll put it out on the curb and somebody will get it. Well, it rains, or if nobody knows that video camera's there, you know, who's going to go get it?
Often doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. You and I were talking earlier about a video called Story of Stuff.
Yeah.
We wanted to tell the audience they can go to storyofstuff.org, because since we don't have time to go into all the environmental benefits of not throwing away so much stuff or buying so much stuff, maybe they can go to that.
Yeah, so Story of Stuff is a great little project. It's done by Annie Leonard. She's done now Story of Plastic and Story of Change. She's interested in progressive activism, and she's made these great little clips for people to learn about the impact that all the stuff we have has on our economic and social systems. And they're animated and very fun to watch and learn and see exactly what the impacts are of all the stuff we're buying and consuming.
So between that and having people go to asquaredshare.org, that should pretty much get them started.
I think so, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For an online archive of today's show, go to ewashington.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.